sewing is rather simple. You basically have two layers of fabric that you wish to sew together. A needle pushes thread through both layers, and then a device underneath basically makes a second piece of thread tangle it. So that way when the needle comes out, the thread gets anchored beneath the surface. So then the machine moves the fabric over a little bit and then repeats the process over and over and over again. So you end up with a single piece of thread from the top moving up and down through the fabric, and another piece of thread on the bottom continually tying the top part down. So by the time you're done, a lot of times you need to be careful to make sure that you finish your pieces properly. Otherwise, if you pull on the wrong thread just the right way, you could end up with the entire thing unraveling in your hand. So we'll get into that a little bit later. So the first thing you need to do is be able to position the thread above as well as below. So first step, we're going to put thread on the spool pin. The spool pin is basically the part that holds the thread on the machine. Now this thread then follows a path along the machine. We'll go through that now. And then that connects over to the thread under the machine. So first things first, let's discuss this. The thread that comes out of the spool first comes here through this thread holder. Once it comes here, and I mean, this is a Singer sewing machine. Singer's great. They have a tendency of numbering the different steps. So most of the time you can just simply follow the directions on the machine. So as you see, this was 1, this is 2. Now we're going to go in this little groove here. This is number 3. Underneath this hook, that's number 4. Now, the thread then goes into this uptake lever. Now, to be able to feed the thread into this part, you need to turn the wheel on the side of the machine. This is the balance wheel. So as we bring the thread up and over, and then back down through here, and as you can see, the next step, you actually have to, let me tip the machine a little bit, you have to hook it behind this little metal tab. So once it's hooked behind this one, we hook it behind this one, which is directly above the needle. And then we finish by going through the needle. Now, let's get real for a minute. I have big fingers. I have really big fingers, and most people find trying to thread the needle on the sewing machine to be rather difficult. I'm sure that's why they invented one of these. This is a thread puller. So here, let me put it on the black surface so you can see it a little bit better. As you see, it's a little thin wire on the end of a little handle. So this handle will allow me to be able to slide those little wires in through the needle. Now I'm going to come in through the back. I'm going to come in through the back. And once I get that thread puller through the back, can you see that? Now, I like to cut the end of my piece of thread. Cutting it means that you don't have a scraggly end. You have a nice neat end to your thread that makes it go into things like the thread puller a little easier. Now I'm going to thread the needle into the thread puller and then immediately pull the thread puller out through the needle. So now this has allowed me to pull the needle right through, or the thread right through the needle perfectly. Now that we have a piece of thread coming out from the top, we simply have to get our thread coming up through the bottom, and then we're ready to sew. Now, unfortunately, this machine is not set up. There isn't a bobbin with thread so I'm going to show you guys how to set that up now. But I should note, always make sure that you use the same thread for the top and the bottom. If you use different thickness threads, or even if it's a slightly different material and it's the same thickness, a lot of times it won't catch on itself the way that it's supposed to, and these are really finely tuned machines. So in my experience, if you're trying to use two different threads, even if it's the same color or it's the thing, you bought the same type and it was the color that was right next to it, there could be a slight variance. So a lot of times you're going to find that's going to tangle up your machine, And it's common for the thread to break and end up having to re-spool the entire thing. So we've discussed the thread coming up from the top. Now we're going to place thread in the bottom, bobbin on the bottom.